At CFRA research investment strategist Lindsey, New York City Council Republican Minority Whip, very close to the president, also Joe Borelli, and after the bell co-host Connell, McShane. Lindsey, this business investment surge and the fact one company after another, I guess we're a third to close to halfway through the earnings process. Most companies are handily beating estimates, but they do talk, with very few exceptions, of an environment that looks still good. Do you view that the same way?
I absolutely am seeing that. And in the last couple of days especially, we've heard from a lot of industrial companies, which is where you would expect to hear some maybe sluggishness or pressure because of trade and the weakness that we were seeing in the manufacturing environment. And the numbers have been really good, and guidance has been pretty good, too. More companies are actually raising guidance in the industrial space than lowering it, which was a shock to us.
You know, Connell, you have to report on this every day, too. But I'm always amazed about the ones who prepare you for the worst, beat on the upside. I pulled that in school. Right. I tell my parents I'm going to get all D's and F's. They see a couple of C's and I'm immense in material. But, you know, are we being kind of head-faked here?
Wasn't the old Jack Welch beat by a penny at the GE
yeah, just enough to say, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think Lindsey generally is right because those are what the overall numbers show. And then we see some exceptions to the rule kind of creeping their way in. Caterpillar was an example of that, where some companies are obviously having issues with the tariffs. Others anticipate that they'll have issues in the future. But in general, if you look at durable goods today, it's another good example of it. This part of the economy is holding up. So that brings up the obvious question. If that's the case, then why are we almost assured 100% that the Federal Reserve is going to be cutting rates? So that's the kind of the push.
Yeah,
if things are so great.
Or leave it at a quarter, I guess. But, Joe, you know, obviously the president has been crunk about this economy. Has reason to. If we're going the other way, everyone would be blasting him for it. But you think it holds on? Is the White House hoping we keep this going? Markets, too, because he likes to quote the markets. He's going to get reelected?
Well, yeah, I think if you cherry-pick some indicators that would reveal that there might be some storm clouds on the horizon, you might be able to make a case. But if you look at the overall trend, things are going well. If you also look at the overall trend of the president's poll numbers, you'll see those going well, too. And I wouldn't be surprised if this continues throughout the rest of the year and then has a significant impact on the rhetoric we see coming out of the 2020 candidates.
There's a couple of interesting things, though, in that poll on that issue. In the Fox poll, his overall numbers are up. The numbers on the economy are terrific.
Right.
Best since 2001. You've talked about this a few times. When President Bush had those numbers in 2001, that was when we were at 59% approval on the economy. His own personal approval at Gallup was about 57%, I believe. So you could argue that President Trump's personal approval rating of 46 probably should be higher, and then, you know, then why
but I think it will be. I think it will be. Look, the biggest storm cloud that hung over this administration was largely lifted yesterday with this performance by Robert Mueller. I mean, this is the one sort of major thing that was an obstacle, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of people, that was keeping the president's numbers artificially down. That has lifted. This was a disaster yesterday, and I think we wouldn't be surprised if we see some of the numbers, not just in a few polls, but in a lot of the polls, trending up.
You know, it is interesting, too, because even Democrats who said, no, there was a lot of stuff that came out of that hearing and signs the president perjured himself. All that might be the case. I don't follow this closely enough. But the end issue is I didn't see a storm of Democrats, you know, going beyond the 90 or 95 who've always been for impeachment, you know, adding to that. You know, it's like the needle hasn't really moved.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, the consumer is still feeling very good at this point in time. That's why they're thinking the economy is great. And maybe President Trump isn't getting the entire credit he should for that. But do you really think they're going to go and sway to the Democratic side of the party? Like, things could change more significantly if the leader changes. We're looking at wages up 8 months in a row, over 3%, unemployment at a near 50-year low.
And markets hate that. This is where you guys, I'm just speaking generally about people who follow this stuff, that you really aren't red or blue. It's all about green, and the environment has been for making money. That's why Wall Street collectively did not want to see Bill Clinton thrown out of office, because he was good for them. The internet boom was going on. You don't want to chase that, right?
Right. And in fact, the market is a good tell sign of who's going to become the next president, too. Before Trump was elected to president, you saw the market decline sharply going into the election the month and a half before that. And that has been the historical pattern, too. So if you see that, you can expect a change in leadership. If not, Trump may continue to stay in office.
It's an interesting point because at the end of the day, right, if you just look at by the numbers right now, there will be people who don't personally like the president, probably a fair amount of them that still vote for him. And if enough do in states where he needs them to, then he wins because he's doing well in the economy. On a number of other issues, he's underwater, as the pollsters say. His worst issue by far in this poll was race relations, where it was only 32% approval. There are other issues where he's struggling as well, but there will be people who say he hasn't done a good job on that type of an issue who still vote for him because they agree with his policies. And the numbers suggest that it'll be how many of those people in the states that are willing to cross the line and say, you know what, I'm not a huge fan of the guy personally for whatever reason, but I do like his policies, and that probably decides the thing.
I don't want to make a big deal out of this, Joe, but this I wouldn't call it a revolt as much as maybe a brush fire among Republicans on this debt ceiling agreement, where a good many of them say, I can't sign on to this. This is a sham. We're supposed to be the party of fiscal discipline. Good luck on that one. But Democrats hardly are in that position either. But to a man or woman, and we talked to many of them saying, no, I'm going to vote no on this. The very same day we're hearing in the Senate, at least 3 Republicans joined Democrats on sanctions against Saudi Arabia over the president saying not a good idea. So what are you going to make of that?
Look, there's always going to be differences in the party between House leadership and the Freedom Caucus and other senators over a lot of issues. If you want to compare apples to apples, though, you have to look at the dissension within the ranks of Democrats to see that one is almost lopsided, overwhelming, whereas the other one is sort of the traditional spending opposition that we saw from these members. I mean, you have members of Nancy Pelosi's own caucus attacking her outright. You're not getting that with Republicans. I think the Republicans have had historically a better time coming together in advance.
But are you worried that they don't mean what they say? That if you're going to tout yourself...
Politicians?
Well, I hear you. But that... You know, eventually this debt is going to be an issue. I don't know when, but we're spinning ourselves into oblivion here.
We really are, and I think the market and the general American public have been waiting to find out when this is going to be a major problem. But the thing is,
nowhere in the top 10 issues.
Right?
Maybe that's what they're thinking.
Exactly, it's not a problem until it's a problem, right? So I think that the American people, that's not going to impact what they're going to vote at.
And that's the point. The biggest near-term problem for the president would be a downturn in the economy, or maybe even a downturn in the stock market. So it'd be really interesting to watch over the next few months how many decisions are kind of guided by that. This is a situation because he made the deal with the Democrats in the House and the Speaker that he probably has the cover with the Democrats supporting to get this through. The idea is that, you stave off, quote-unquote, disaster with the debt ceiling not being raised and all the jitters that might come for the stock market. But does he handle China in that way as well? And is he more likely to cut a deal on China because it would help the stock market? Or is there political pressure the other way that he knows he'd be attacked by the Democrats if he cuts a deal on China and he pushes it off to after the election? I'm just not really sure which way it goes.
China deal, market reaction.
The market would go higher. Yeah. Exponentially higher.
Is it any deal? They don't have to even see that it's a great deal? They have a deal?
I think it's a deal because it removes uncertainty. The market doesn't like uncertainty.
Joe, what do you think?
It's another check mark in the Trump box. If he signs a deal, I think the market reacts positively. And I think, again, poll numbers react positively as well.
All right. Even if he's up against, Bill de Blasio. I guess that's
an easy one.
Anything could happen. All right, anything could happen. All right, guys, we'll be seeing you later on.